Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity Podcast, episode 47. We are closing in on our 1-year anniversary or our first birthday. And we are joined today. Well, first of all, we're joined by the usual suspects. Mr. Peter Lant, say hello.
Hello, how are you doing? No answer, but there you go. That's cool. And yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Good. And Mr. Paul Bassett, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm going to get my pity party in early for our guest. I've got a bad cold.
Okay.
A really bad cold. I just want to make everyone aware that it's really bad cold.
We did say if you are going to blow your nose and clear your airways, you will mute yourself first, won't you?
I'm going to be like Bob Fleming.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
Local joke.
Okay. And we have a very special guest today who is joining us. He's woken up. I'm not sure if he's woken up earlier, if he's normally up at this time, but it's just gone 6 a.m. in San Diego, California, USA. And we are joined by Franz Snideman, not Snideman, not Spider-Man, Snideman. Good morning, Franz.
Hey guys, good morning. Thank you for having me. I too also have a cold. I have a 2-year-old daughter, gave me a cold. My first cold since the pandemic. So I will definitely mute myself if I have to blow my nose or if I have to cough.
Okay.
So I pre-apologize, but
Well, you've got a different approach to Paul. You've got whiskey to clear the airways, haven't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I will admit I don't drink alcohol in the morning. I can't do it.
Unless it's medicinal, and then it's allowed, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, they say you should celebrate celebrate small successes. So
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm game.
So those of us who are regular listeners to the Health Oddity podcast, which I hope is all of you, we do have obviously all of our previous 46 episodes on all the usual platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and you can go back and start from the start or listen to any of the earlier episodes. But if you are a regular listener, you will have heard Franz's name mentioned I would say probably at least half a dozen times over the last nearly a year by various guests who have, come into contact with Franz over the years. He is someone who is incredibly highly regarded within the industry, and like I say, he's been based in San Diego for many years. I've been in contact with Franz for many years. We've never met in person, but hopefully we will do one day. So first of all, I'm just going to kind of hand over to Franz. If you could just kind of give us a little bit of a, I think Brett Jones called it the Cliff Notes, didn't he? The kind of abridged history. I know you've been around a long time and you've done a lot of stuff, but who are you? Where are you? And what are you kind of working on at the moment, Franz? If that's not too massive a question to
No,
throw at you at 6 a.m.
Yeah, I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version. So. Yeah, I'm in San Diego, originally from a small town in New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I've been a personal trainer since 1996. I was a senior in college at Arizona State University, and I really had no clue what I was going to do with my life. I mean, I think I was just, I was very much drawn to athletics, and as a kid who probably had horrible ADHD in every aspect, I was never going to sit at a desk, and just there was nothing else I was going to do with my life that didn't involve movement and moving around and teaching. And it was a perfect bridge for me. And I never looked back. I've never literally done anything else as an adult. So I don't have a lot of experience in anything else. I'm very dumb when it comes to other things. Probably don't know that much. I know a lot about what I know. And that doesn't mean I'm not interested in other things, but that has been my life. Athletics, I was a collegiate sprinter, so I have a huge passion for sprinting, power and speed, and I've kind of brought that into my coaching all these decades. And currently, I am doing predominantly virtual coaching. right, since the pandemic, even before the pandemic. So I'm doing a lot of online coaching, and that involves like actually like one-on-one Zoom sessions, or I'm working with couples. But I've also currently, my new passion is I've developed a 90-day coaching program for dads, and I'm specifically targeting dads. Mainly just because I am a dad. I have 3 kids. I understand what it is to be a dad, but I also understand just kind of the hormonal cliff that a lot of dads go through, and how that affects everything from just their confidence, their mindset, as their hormone profile gets worse, digestion gets worse, depression sets in sometimes with a lot of these guys. And I think it's a needed service now, and that's kind of where my heart lies, is just kind of hand holding dads through a very successful 90 days to kind of set them up to change forever, so that they can get leaner. But it's not just about getting leaner, it's getting stronger, it's getting more confident. For many of these guys, it's enjoying a training process. It's just kind of learning like, hey, like you can be so much better just by doing a couple of things, like a couple of exercises. It's not rocket science, but you do need accountability. And to me, to be able to provide coaching to guys all over the world, I've literally picked up clients from all over, which has been amazing. And it's just kind of organically grown. I haven't like done any Facebook ads or anything. I just kind of preach my message, and I attract dads that say, hey, like, yeah, I need to lose fat. Like, I'm not feeling great. Like, I don't like that my wife isn't attracted to me anymore. I mean, like really like core issues that every man, is going to deal with. So to me, that's the most exciting. It has the most potential. And in a nutshell, that's kind of where I am. I've been a kettlebell coach. I've been a Strong First senior instructor. I've taught my Primal Speed sprinting certification. Literally, I mean, I've taught it in Europe. I've taught it in Budapest. I've taken it down to South America, Mexico. So I'm a little bit kind of all over the map in my career, but I think it's just all based on, I think, human performance for like the average person. I don't, I have worked with pro athletes. I actually have some pro athletes, but that is not who I focus on. I focus on normal people, normal dudes, normal guys. Still want to be able to have a drink, but look better in their clothes. So
That's kind of who our audience is. I mean, the danger is when you become too specialist, you end up knowing more and more about less and less until you know everything about nothing.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
Do you find that with your sprinting background, I see a lot of, obviously follow you on Instagram and connected on Facebook and that sort of thing. I see a lot of your sprinting drills that you still do to this day, and you've developed, and I presume it's stuff that you maybe took from what you originally did, maybe at a college level, and you've worked and developed things from there. But do you think that just to touch on sort of sprinting and speed work, because it's something that most people don't do, isn't it? Especially as we get older, we tend to neglect that kind of more explosive power stuff, and people tend to get into this, long, slow, steady cardio, going out for a jog for 30 to 40 to an hour or an hour plus. Is that quite an important component, do you think, of fitness and strength as we age?
I do, and I think that to really be human, if we're just going to speak in like the general terms, is that's a birthright of being human, is that you have these amazing things called tendons, which attach muscles to bones, and they're like giant springs. The biggest tendon in the body would be in the lower body, which is the Achilles tendon. You guys have heard of people who have like Achilles tears, and it's very common. But it's like, I think the most important thing for people to understand is that, what you use, you will keep. And if you remove play, in the sense that like, for example, like, let's say you're playing with your kids and you're playing tag, that involves a lot of reactive movement. It involves a lot of cutting and change of direction. And that is essentially, that's how our bodies are designed. They are designed to quickly absorb energy and release them, much like an animal. Like you guys have deer. I think I was in a park in London several years ago. What?
The
Hampstead
Richmond
Heath?
Park.
The Hampstead Heath? Or no?
Hampstead Heath. I don't know if they have deers, but Richmond
Okay,
Park
well,
definitely does.
okay, maybe I was in a different park then. It was a different, and there was these deer frolicking around, and it's like they don't rely. Animals, for the most part, like don't rely on like muscular contraction, right? They don't like use the energy substrates in your muscle. Like imagine like we're climbing up a hill and we're using our muscles and we're getting fatigued. When you can tap into tendons and just kind of store and release like a deer or like an animal, it's very efficient. You don't have to use a lot of the energy like you would in like a bodybuilding workout where you're really pumping the muscles. So there are so many reasons, but I think just from a practical movement standpoint, to just have a guy or a woman be able to go out and move and play and play a game of frisbee, play a game of softball. You guys probably don't play softball. You play soccer, right? Football,
Yeah.
Or rugby.
Yeah.
So, like, to lose that ability is to lose a big chunk of your human potential. When you just see people that they literally cannot do it, that you reach an age, you've removed yourself from decades and decades of play and explosive movement. And of course, your body adapts. It has no biological reason to keep those adaptations. So it just stops. And your tendons they lose that stiffness. Your fast twitch fibers become dormant. So you have a hard time recruiting them. And yeah, so if you do slow work, which is not bad, but like, if you're doing, maybe you're walking or you're swimming or you're biking and everything is more of an endurance base, which I am not against by any means. I actually do endurance work now, but it certainly is only one piece of the pie, right? It's only one part of it. Like that, a whole nother component of the human experience is to be able to express power. And power is just strength with speed. It's just being able to move from point A to point B faster. So whether you're chucking a rock, throwing something, jumping, you have to sprint out of the way. One of those big double-decker buses is about to hit you, which would be horrifying. It's a really good insurance policy. It's a really good insurance policy. And it's also fun. I think number one is fun.
Yeah, as part of our assessment, when people come into our studio, we use some of the Dan John sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 assessment. And one of the things we do is a standing long jump, and to see if people can standing long jump their height from a static start. And a lot of the people that we work with are, 40 plus, 50 plus, and that kind of spring or power, because most people don't actually, probably after school, don't ever jump for anything, never have both feet leave the floor at once, really, and try and express that power. So whereas some of the other things, people can maybe hold a push-up position, plank, and people might be able to do some other things. The actual act of jumping, it certainly is, like you said, and like you explained, it's a skill that's lost because it's not practiced. And once you just decide, well, I don't have to jump for any reason, and you don't do it for 30 or 40 years, it's no surprise that when you try and do it, you can't, or you have real problems with it.
So I suppose you can't quite literally jump into it. You must have as you said earlier, you working with men of certain age, but just people of certain age who've maybe been sedentary. And I mean, we've had Brad Kearns and Mark, who works with Mark Sissons, and they wrote Primal Endurance, and they advocate sprinting as part of that. But they also are pretty, in terms of what they recommend, the dose is quite low because the nervous system response and the forces going through the body are quite high. So how are you scaling an untrained individual into that level of explosive power, which, on a chassis that's unconditioned, could be, people's Achilles pop and things like that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There's not one way to do it. I think, really understanding kind of where your client is at and what their limitations is. So for me, in my assessment too, it's also just looking at like the bones and the joints. Like if they can't physically get into certain positions, then it's not going to be advantageous for me to throw a bunch of depth jumps and like box jumps and stuff like that. So, but with that being said, like people don't need to be like perfect. Like they don't need to have this like perfect like sprinter's posture to start doing some kind of dynamic power work or plyometric work. I think a really low hanging fruit would be to get people to do something like kettlebell partner passing, right? Where they're able to kind of release a kettlebell and then catch it again. That I think is a really good way to teach the tissues to absorb, like the tendons to quickly have to absorb that force. And then like I do a lot of dynamic drills like that, where like people will have a kettlebell. You can go pretty light too. You don't need to go like super heavy. And where you literally like, you can have your feet together. It's kind of hard to it's kind of hard to talk it out. But like if you were doing like a split lunge, where maybe you stand with your feet together and you dynamically go into like a half lunge, then come back and then just alternate it. So you really get into kind of a rhythm. It's pretty low amplitude though. There's not like a lot of like, there's not a lot of force absorption, but then you add a kettlebell to that, where they drop and catch a kettlebell. And I think for me, that's kind of a safe way to put huge forces through the tissue. I actually like it more than like a traditional kettlebell swing, because you're the fact that you have to drop something, and gravity is, what is it, 9.8 meters per second? It's pretty fast. You're accentuating the forces. So I would say that would be kind of like a low hanging fruit way to get just a person who just really has no business going out and doing like a 100-meter sprint. Like
I like that, because no one talks about the deceleration phase in these things. We talk about the acceleration, but often it's the deceleration and trying to stop that momentum, which can put a lot of stress on the tendons.
Yes, and absolutely. And if somebody's even, I'll take it a step beyond that. Like somebody really is like, maybe they have tendon issues, or they're genetically predisposed to having like tendinopathies. Like some people just genetically are going to have that problem, right? They produce more calcium, like they're just tendon nightmares. I happen to be one of those people, so I understand it very well. So in that case, I might even start somebody with like a positional isometric, where they're, I'm sure you guys have done isometrics, where you're stuck in like a lunge, or maybe like the bottom of a push-up or something, and those small little movements you get when you're in that push-up, it's basically you're absorbing little tiny amounts of force, but more importantly, you're learning to relax the muscle, right? You contract, relax. So isometrics, I think, are, again, you wouldn't look at that and think of that as a plyometric. You're like, no, that's not a plyometric. Like but in a very direct way, you're getting the same type of rhythmical switching from contract, relax. So I'm not tied to any one modality. It's the concept. So isometrics, like extreme, I think here we call them extreme isos. And I think those are really, really good. But like that's one phase. Like I would never keep anybody there forever. And then eventually the goal immediately is to get somebody marching. I think marching is kind of the gateway for most people to get to running, to get to sprinting. So you get people marching and get them moving their bones, and the marching, it's slow enough to where people are gonna get a stretch in their tissue. Like for example, if I bring my knee up toward if I flex my hip, the glute is going to stretch. That stretch is gonna force it to really work. So I get that stretch, and then the glute automatically turns on. So then from marching, that opens up everything. You could do high knees. You could do what are called running A's, which I do with a lot of people. And then skipping. Skipping, you don't have to like do a power skip where you jump like as high as possible. So I think with those three things, marching turning into skipping, as long as the amplitude is not too high to where you're like, people really shouldn't be absorbing those forces. If you're consistent with that, like then eventually you sneak in like a little acceleration sprint. Like, hey, we're gonna kind of do some running in place, just kind of lean forward and just like run like 20 meters. And then eventually that becomes a very safe way to teach somebody how to sprint. And it's not super complicated. And it's it's basically sprinting mechanics broken down to its basic elements, right? The hip, you got one hip and you got one shoulder inflection, and you got one arm and one hip in extension. And I don't know any other drill that really accentuates that. So, but for me, it's kind of those three, right? Isometrics, which will help the tendon. And then I think there's a huge, I think a lot of trainers are missing the boat, and they don't understand how effective doing, like, literally having a partner to throw a kettlebell to, which sounds absolutely crazy. Or
you have that, does it flip once? Is that the idea?
No, you can, like there's like kettlebell juggling. There's a guy named Gus Peterson in, I think he's in Denver. The guy's a genius. I actually had him out to do certification several years ago. And I never had my nervous system more jacked in my life. I mean, in a good way. I mean, it was, I mean, you're spinning the handle like a helicopter. You're going behind the back. I mean, it was just psychotic. But you want to talk about like preventing Alzheimer's disease and like brain health. I mean, this guy had like a genetic problem in his brain that we didn't know about. And he had like a stroke where he lost like 30% of his brain, right? And they're like, you're never going to walk again. A day later, he was walking. The doctor's like, what the hell's going on with you? And I 100% think it's because his brain is so plastic, because he does all this crazy juggling and stuff. Like his body literally had zero effect. And he lost like 30% of his brain. Maybe it wasn't that bad, something like that. And that's a whole nother tangent. But again, I think if anybody does kettlebell training, you can literally just kind of pass it to yourself, where you release the kettlebell, let it fall, and then go down and get it. So stuff like that is, to me, that is a great launching pad to teach your body how to absorb force. And I don't know where you can get that, because you don't really get that in like Olympic lifting with barbell. You don't get that. There's not really any, like, okay, you do a heavy power clean, then what? You throw it to the ground. You don't like swing the Olympic bar between your legs. So to me, I mean, I think kettlebell is just the most underrated tool, but I just use it a little bit differently than just doing like like a swing, which is great. I think swing is awesome. A swing is awesome, but you don't really leave the ground on the swing, right? So for locomotion, being able to kind of leave the ground or drop into like a squat or a lunge and have to catch a kettlebell, it sounds dangerous. It's actually not that dangerous.
But this is where like, people might think like, well, why do you need to do that? But it's very powerful because, a lot of guys I see just going out walking. Okay, there's a lot of hills around where I live. We live next to Wales, where there's a lot of mountains. So people can go walking up the mountains, but coming back down, they hurt their knees, because walking up is hard. Is hard. People always think walking up something is harder, but actually coming down, you put a lot of force through your body, aren't you? Through your hips, ankles, knees, and everything. And a lot of people get sore knees doing that. So this is the kind of thing that'll unlock the ability to be able to do that, won't it?
Right, exactly. Like I honestly think, like, other than like sprinting, because sprinting is a huge training effect for everybody. But we're talking about maybe men that shouldn't be doing sprinting right now. Just from like a logical standpoint, like, you haven't played soccer since you're 18. Like, let's do something different to prepare you for that. Marching, isometrics. But in talking about the going downhill thing, yeah, I mean, a lot of people complain about their knees, right? Hey, I was great going up. Oh my God, I couldn't walk for a week. My knees were shot. And they can't handle the eccentric forces. So should people be doing eccentrics? Yeah, they should be doing eccentric. They should be doing slow eccentrics. But that's one piece of the puzzle. They also need to do eccentrics quickly, which would be something like skipping, any kind of sprinting drill, because your body, as it moves faster, you're absorbing, in some cases, like 3, 4, 5 times body weight. So,
and I've seen when I did a qualification with Mike Boyle, and we were doing, and he did a lot of kind of marching and then into skipping and all these things. Yeah. And it reminded me when they were talking about box jumps, and they always said, jump on and then step off, because so many times people, especially if people aren't used to it, the jump up is usually fine, but you see people, they do a jump and they jump back off and land, and it's usually on that kind of jumping back off and landing where people injure themselves. They'll like you say, tweak an Achilles or twist a knee or something like that.
Oh, definitely.
Because they're jumping off of something and landing on the floor, where they're kind of a bit more relaxed. Whereas if you're driving up and everything's very, rigid, and you're prepared to generate force, it's great. But it's then absorbing that force when you land back down, isn't it? Where injuries occur if you're not used to it and you're not ready for it.
1,000%. But it's one of those things where, like, yes, we don't want to injure people. As coaches, we're like, yeah, like we don't want to injure our clients. Like we don't want to injure ourselves. However, like, in order to really be injury proof, you've got to put those forces through your body. My whole thing is that you just do it gradually, right? You don't like slam your body into the wall. You literally like inch yourself forward, like a little bit, like, let's just like, inch you there kind of progressively. And if you get really sore, we back off a bit, and, kind of let your body dictate when you're ready to go. There's not like one magical system out there that's going to be able to take everybody through that at the same timetable, because everybody's different. And some people have a really big foundation. They played sports for 30 years. So that's a very different athlete. If I get somebody who's in their 40s, but they have a huge background, it's like they already have some of those qualities built up. Doesn't mean they can't get injured, but it means that you're able to, your starting place is a lot different with somebody who already knows how to move like that, right? So it's very case dependent, right? It's like, well, what's the context of the situation? Who are we working with? But the bottom line is, you can find somewhere, if you think of a continuum, like a power and eccentric speed continuum, like, what's a good place to start that? I would err on the side of being like super cautious. But most important is that we're intentional about doing something. Like, hey, we know that this is part of movement, right? And it's just like anything else. Like, if you don't do it, you're going to lose it. And power is an amazing quality, and it really is. I think it's the most misunderstood and probably the most underrated in terms of working with. I mean, even seniors, guys that are 65 and older, just like we always just say, hey, take it easy, like do yoga or something, like go slow. Like, well, who falls the most?
Yeah.
And right. And last time I checked, falling is a very power activity, right? You go tumbling down.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, come on, that's like power. So it's like, we're training you in a manner that's not really preparing you for the inevitable.
So it's kind of like reaction.
I love the Dan John stuff. I love the Dan John, like, fall matrix. And like, I actually bought, during the pandemic, I bought these gymnastics mats for my garage. Cause I mean, I need to do that stuff too, where you just kind of walk and then you tumble, or you like dive and you, so it's, I think there is tremendous benefit to even like thinking of power training in terms of fall prevention.
So how would you talk to people about, because you'll get guys in the 40s, 50s, 60s, ladies in the 40s, 50s, 60s as well, maybe even younger, who are like, they've told themselves that they can't do that anymore. It's quite interesting, because there was a thing I was doing, or I have been learning, and it's like a therapy thing where you do therapy on people, where physical therapy, and but you have to deal with the limiting belief of it as well, or the memory of pain of a trauma or something like that. But you can also do this thing on animals. One of the guys on the course does it on horses, and he said it's amazing, because you do it on a horse and they get better much quicker, because they haven't got the they don't think that hurts and I can't do that. They're just like, all right, I'll get on with it. But people will be, I can't do that because I hurt my hip when I was younger, or I broke I've had a knee replacement, or whatever it is. So how do you deal with that with people who come in, especially online as well? Because obviously people have got to trust you. But if they're saying, I can't do this, how do you get it over to them that you should be able to do that, and we can build that back?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think I kind of use kind of a combination, like, one, like education, like, hey, like, I get it. Like, I try to find some kind of rapport with them. Like, I've been there, I understand, but when I was able to kind of I'm getting you to do, here's the benefit of it. Like, here's what happened. So, I mean, I just kind of work with them where they're at. I mean, obviously, like, some people have more fear than others. And that's, I think it's a very real reality that we have to work with, is people's self-limiting beliefs and thoughts. But, I think being able to also, show them maybe other people that have been where they've been, and say, hey, I mean, now with things kind of opening up and, things are a little bit better, getting them in an environment where other people in their age group are succeeding, to me seems to be the fastest way. That's not always practical, but when they see somebody, like, subconsciously, they don't, like, they're going to start questioning their own belief. They're like, well, wait a second, like, what, why is she, what? Like, so sometimes you got to kind of, kind of kick them in the pants a little bit, say, fine, I won't say more than I've said, but, like, look at these people. So environment can be huge, can be absolutely huge, because if they're just in their own environment and there's nobody pushing them, there's nobody to kind of like to have as a role model. So I think it's kind of twofold, right? It's obviously empathy, compassion, like, hey, I get it, I understand. However, you can get there with just take baby steps. That's kind of my approach to everything. Like, okay, well, we need to get there. There's a lot of ways to get there, but, like, I mean, you can't take them to step 37 if they're only in step 1.
Yeah, so I think that's quite powerful, because people can't help comparing themselves to other people. And if you're comparing yourself to something unrealistic, like on Instagram, like a bodybuilding physique or something, which isn't unrealistic, but it's hard, like much more hard work, then you're fighting a losing battle. But if you can compare yourself to like Doris over there, who can now do all the things that you're talking about, it's like, well, if she can do it or he can do it, why can't I? And I think the three of us train people in groups. A lot of people in groups, and you can do that. If someone's a new starter, you can say, well, I've got a guy called Dave, and I'm like, Dave didn't touch a weight for 3 weeks because he couldn't get into position, he couldn't do things. So we started him out very slowly, and now look at him, and he'll be thrown around a kettlebell or whatever. So I think that's very powerful to give people the sight of where they can get to, the progression of where they can get. I think
it's an advantage for you guys. I really think it's an advantage. I think, humans, I mean, we're like pack animals, right? It's like we are affected, especially if they can find somebody that they can kind of, oh, well, I'm kind of like that person. Like, I'm kind of like them. They say, oh, well, she's 20 years older than me. Like, what's my excuse? So, I think there's a lot of ways, but I think that's just a reality that every coach has to deal with. Is, like, how do you bring up the people and give them skills that we know they need? But, they're just like, oh, no, I don't do that. Like, their identity is like already made up in their mind. Like, okay, like, you can do it, but I mean, I understand, but it's, so I just think it's just a matter of kind of meeting people where they're at, and then just not really giving up on them. And, I mean, eventually they will get there, just maybe patience, right?
Mm-hmm. So Franz, with your kind of the work that you're doing now with the kind of 40 plus dads, so I'd imagine though a lot of the principles will kind of be universal. What obviously we've got the training element that's going to have an effect and have an impact on people, but I saw one of your posts, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where you said about you'll come to an understanding whereby training more isn't going to help you get leaner. You have to look at your nutrition and get that on point. So what kind of things do you kind of focus on with the people that you work with besides training? Can you talk a little bit about some of the other elements that are part of the program?
Yes. So I've really ventured into more of the nutrition and the lifestyle, predominantly because that's what was, I think, the big bottleneck for most dads. Is a lot of them can get back into training, or they'll go to the gym 5 days a week. Now we could argue that maybe their programming is not amazing, but at least they're trying. At least they're doing something. So to me, in working with just hundreds of dads, I just figured out like, yeah, like the biggest bottleneck for now that I'm seeing is they just don't really have an understanding of food, of calories, their habits. They're just their basic habits with things like, do they even know like where they're getting their protein from? Do they know how much water they're drinking? Just very basic things. And when I start with somebody, I really only have about 2 or 3 things I want them to do initially. One of them, like, we'll basically come up with like a goal, like, okay, like your goal weight is here. Most of the guys, not all the guys, most of the dads I'm getting are wanting to lose weight. They're not wanting to gain weight. I got a couple dads that need to gain weight. They're, vegans, or they're like 130 pounds. They're like really lean, but they need to gain weight. So, but predominantly we're talking about weight loss. So it's educating them on calories, educating them on, portion sizes. But I do it in a very slow approach to where it's not really like, it is a 90-day program and it is focused, but it's more geared on, getting them to just change kind of their habits in general. So usually I'll focus more just on, getting their protein numbers down and not freaking out. Like, hey, like, we're just going to track what you're eating. Don't judge it, put it down. That in itself usually works. Because within a month they're like, dude, I dropped 11 pounds. I'm like, yeah, no, I didn't really tell you couldn't have anything. It was the mindfulness for the first time in their lives of saying, shoot, I'm eating 1,200 calories of almonds. There's a 1,500 calorie bag of chips I down every afternoon. Like, just removing that, you've removed 2,000 plus calories out of their diet. You haven't really changed anything. And I never told them that they couldn't have it. Like, that's the thing. It's not like this strict like approach where you're not, so that's my approach. My approach is number one, self-awareness, getting them self-aware. And usually after the first call or two, I can tell, like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. You're just gonna hit water. That's all you're gonna do the first month. We're gonna get your water down. I'm gonna give you like a protein range of, let's say 120 grams to like 170 grams. Like, you're just like, if you hit it anywhere in there, you can just put a check in your calendar. That was a success. Like, you are doing amazing. And we usually just start with that, and that gets the ball rolling to where then we can talk about carbs and fat. And but it's not about restriction, and it's not about elimination. I know there are some trainers and coaches that are better at that. Like, it's just not my mindset. I'm a foodie. I drink a couple times a week. Like, I'm a real dad. Like, I'm not, I'm not pretending to be some holier than thou. Like, I never put anything bad in my body. Like, I think 80% of what I eat is great. I eat just vegetables and strawberries and fruits and protein and steak and chicken. I eat really well. But if I want to have a slice of pizza, I have a slice of pizza. If I want to have a whiskey or two with my beautiful South African wife, I do. If my kids want to go get ice cream, I go get ice cream. So I think it's just being real with that.
That's the thing you've just said there. Because if you talk to dads, you're like, oh, we're going to do all this restriction for you, but you're still going to be going to places for ice cream and stuff with your kids. It's not just about you, is it? It's about your family as well. And if you're going to be like, well, I'm going to do this thing over here, you can do what you like. It's not going to work. And
I had a client, a similar client, same age group, and I've been training him online. And he said, I've totally failed because he'd had a lollipop with his kid, and I'm like, have a lollipop with your kid. Don't worry about it.
What Franz just said is I think when you get people to track calories, or you just see how many calories they're having, the reason why they don't want to do it isn't because they don't want to do it. It's because they don't want to see how many calories they're having. Because when they do realize, they're like, wow. And then you start getting the realization, have you seen how many calories are in a bag of crisps or a bag of chips? Have you seen how many calories? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, that's a lot, isn't it? And you're like, yes. And they knew it, but they didn't acknowledge it. And then
I think one of the things is
get the realization there, and then all of a sudden they can get the result.
It's a big thing to come face to face with reality, isn't it?
Yeah, hugely.
And I think the way that you tackle it, with, like you say, you are a dad of three children. You're in your 40s, so you're talking to other people like you, aren't you? And I think having a realistic approach to things, because people don't want to be perfect or have this perfectionist. We had Josh Hillis on the podcast a little while ago, from Fat Loss Happens on Monday and Lean and Strong, he wrote. And this kind of food psychology and eating skills and habit-based approach, this kind of perfectionism is a real danger, isn't it? Because at the first sign of something going wrong, you kind of throw your toys out the pram, and that leads to that behavior of like Paul said, oh, I've had a lollipop, I've ruined it, I might as well just like totally open the floodgates and I'll start again next Monday, and it's kind of
it's called self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like the analogy I use with my clients is like, hey, wait. Okay. So if you had a flat tire in your car, okay, are you going to get out of the car and say, damn it, and go puncture the other 3 tires? Right? No, you're not. Right? So I'm like, so chill out, calm down. You went over your calories, 1,000 calories. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It ultimately doesn't matter. Like, big deal. Who cares? Get back on track. It doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. So yeah, I think the mindset, and I think the fitness industry has done, a horrible job of demonizing food. And, one trainer says this, one trainer says that, like, you can't eat fruit, you're gonna get fat, or it's like, no, like, first of all, no. It's what you understand and you educate people, like you can do a lot, you can have a lot, you can enjoy food. I mean, I would eliminate the foods that are just not good for you, or that certain foods are like gateways to just, I'm like, yeah, maybe we need a little bit of borders here. But within that, you still have freedom to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And we're all men here. We're all, we make our choices. But I think the reason the coaching I'm finding is it's so beneficial, because like I'm in their corner. Like I'm like the one guy, I have street cred, right? I've got the credibility. Just I'm not like I'm not like the leanest trainer. I'm not like some Adonis. Like I'm just a normal guy. I'm probably fitter than the average dad. But yeah, I've figured out that you really can like enjoy your life and still stay relatively lean, which I think every man wants that. But I want to hit on another point that I think is really huge, and I think it's that accountability, which I think coaching is so good for. Like if you have good rapport with your client, just for them to have somebody on the other end of your phone, they can message me through like an app that I use. We get on a Zoom call. We just flesh it out in real life. Like, hey, like, okay, like you're going to go camping. You're not going to have access. Like, let's just think through some strategies that can kind of keep you somewhat on track. Not like perfect, doesn't need to be perfect, whatever that is. So I think just the ability to have somebody to keep you accountable, who's not your wife, who's not your best friend, that's where I just think, having a coach that is vested in you is like, that really is a game changer for so many people. And we all need it. Like I have a business coach in Canada. Like I've got other coaches. Like I just think, yeah, I can't do it all on my own. Like I don't know everything. And a lot of dads, they just need a little bit of structure and guidance, but it has to be simple and it's got to be practical, right? There need to be some ridiculous training regime that nobody, that The Rock can maybe follow. And, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, maybe he can't even follow it. So
there's, I'm not sure of this as a caveat for legal purposes, but there's probably other stuff involved there as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to say as well, I think, do you talk, because I've had quite a few conversations over the last week with clients who, and they are predominantly men. Well, there's one thing that I think men are sometimes not, well, I think we probably all know, are not particularly very good at asking for help. And we have this kind of, this feeling of, I've got to be strong, I'm a husband or I'm a father and I maybe run a business or I'm a man, whatever it is. And actually that kind of actually asking for help and accepting and acknowledging that you need help, that's a big kind of barrier for lots of guys, isn't it? I think, and opening up, and that's a massive thing. So tapping into people of our kind of age, do you find that? Well, I suppose the people who reach out to you, so they've kind of overcome that. But that is certainly an issue, isn't it?
Oh, big time. Yeah, I think we all know that women they're just much more able to kind of put the ego aside, and they're just different. Women are different. I think they just I need help. Like, guys are not that good. Yeah, I think it's really tough for a lot of guys. But I think one of the benefits, though, of social media, of technology, of the internet, of the cell phone, is that, like, if they get a message kind of pounded into their brain, there's never been an easier time for men to reach out. So I think we're living in a really cool time, because now guys can, we're all on our phones every day, so they can get that help. It's just that it's a little longer for them to reach out, right? But yeah, I mean, it's so cool. Like, what's interesting is that, like if I have to pitch anybody or like get on a sales call and like try it, like, that never works. What works is a guy who's listened to me and said, you know what, I'm resonating with your style. I'm in. Like, I need help. I'm like, cool. Like, there's no sell involved. It's like, I'm just giving them what they want. Which, every guy just wants control over his body. He wants to look good naked. He wants to look good in his, in his clothes. And he just wants a plan that's going to work for his life. And it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. You clean up the food, you drink water, you start lifting weights. I mean, Dan John talks about it all the time. It literally is not just finding the right coach for you. Right? It's finding that person that is good fit. I'm not a great coach for everybody. Like, some guys need way harder. They need like boot camp, and I'm just not that coach. I'm not that coach. And I usually don't take those clients because I'm just not. That's just not my skill set. Like, I would rather somebody change forever, like change their life. I'm patient. I'll stay with a client for a year or two. I mean, I'll stay with them as long as they want to stay with me, to make sure that they develop these skills. And like, it's a non-issue anymore. They change who they are as a person, like that. I don't really have any interest in like the 28 days to 6-pack abs, or like, you don't really change as a person, right?
I like what you said earlier about, because people will be, why do you need a coach? Because people think like, okay, you're paying for a friend to tell you what to do, right? Sometimes.
Right.
Let's use that example. So, and you're saying like, be accountable to somebody, not your wife, not your friends, like your closest friends and that. That's because everyone is in with you when you're doing that, aren't you? You need somebody to step back, because like, if you're in your life and you're in this and you're like, I can't work out what to do, you need somebody to step back and look at it from a 1,000 yard view or whatever, and look at it and say, here's what you need to do. And you said something earlier, like when Paul said about the lollipop, and like, it's all finished, it's all done, I'll have to go back to the start. Have you read The Dip by Seth? Is it Seth Rogen?
Is it Seth Godin? I think.
Yeah, I've read a lot of this stuff. I don't think I've read that one though.
The Dip. It's very short, and it's basically about, you start out on a journey, and you've got informed optimism. Everything's great. You're like, everything's going well. Then you have your lollipop or moment. I'm using that as an example because that's what Paul said, or your tire bursts or whatever, and then you just go boom, straight down into the dip, and you're in there, and everything's rubbish. So the easiest way out of that is to just go back to where you were and say, it was fine, I'm not going to bother. Or you can make your way out. But when you're thinking about your goal, which is in the future, it's all future-based thoughts, which is fear and doubt and all of that. You haven't got the clarity to get there, which is where a coach will recognize that and say, I know exactly where you are because I've been there. And I know a lot of people who've been there, and there is a way out. The easiest way out is to go back to where you were. But if you do that, you've done that for the last 20 years. And it's really interesting. I can recommend it. I'll put it in the notes actually, but yeah, The Dip.
Yeah.
Great.
No, I love it. I love that concept because, and I think that's another reason why coaching is important, is because the inevitable, non-linear nature of getting in shape. Like, it's just not like, hey, you're in shape. It's being able to educate people and say, hey, this is normal. Like, I don't get excited if you lose 2 pounds or gain 2 pounds. Like, I don't care. Like, I honestly don't care. Like, great, good. I'm excited that you hit the habits that we chose that you were going to focus on. Like, you got your whatever 8,000 steps in today, or 10,000 steps. You drank your 100 ounces of water. And even if you didn't lose weight, I don't give a rat's ass. It's like it's about becoming the person that you need to be. Your body will change. It may take time, but I think it's being there when normally the default would be to do what it said in the book, to go back and say, well, that was horrible, I'll never do that again. Like, go back to that place of safety, which isn't really safety. I mean, no such thing as stability and safety. It doesn't exist. But
I mean, you must, then there is a kind of alignment of values and goals, isn't there? Because you must have people who believe that so the reason they may come to you and say, hey, I've lost 2 kilos is because maybe they think that when they've got to 10 kilos, I mean, this is a subject that we talk about quite a bit, but you know, when I've lost the 10 kilos, I'm going to be the person I want to be. That's when everything aligns, and all of a sudden I'll feel free.
Say, don't they? Like, when I get there, I'll be happy. You know, that's the main one, isn't it? Right. When I get there, I'll be happy. You know.
I mean, what do you answer with a question, or do you just say, okay, let's go for the goal and see what's going to happen, or do you try and direct in a different direction?
You know, I think it really depends. I really like to tap into people's goals and kind of their like the reasons, the why. But I kind of always bring it back to just like, what can they focus on now? Like, you know, what's their behavior that they can do right now? So it's so, like, we can get so caught up in, you know, in goals and ambition that that's important, but it's more about a compass. Like, you know what, like, as long as we're kind of like the compass, just like, as long as we're heading, like you were heading that way, we just kind of moving it this way. We know it's over there. We're going to go there. I don't know if I'm like so like goal orientated, in the sense that I've really just become more support, you know, more orientated just like what's freaking practical for this person. Right? If you give them 1,000 things to do, it's like a total failure, and they feel terrible. It's like, well, God, that was on me. That was my fault. Like, I gave them too much, and I didn't realize who they were. I didn't realize, you know, it's great that they have these goals and they want something, but they'll never get the want if they don't actually get it in the calendar. And even if they don't really believe that they can do it, which that is an issue. Like, some men just like they have self-limiting beliefs. They don't really believe it. And I get to that core issue. I'm like, do you really think? They're like, I don't really think I can do it. I failed in so many diets. I keep bouncing back. Okay, fine. Like, you don't need to believe 100%. I'm like, but do you believe that you can like walk, or do you believe that you can just, you know, instead of eating carbs for their, you know, first 2 meals a day, like you could just add some protein? Is that, well, yeah, I could totally do that. I can 100% do that. So then from there, they literally develop the self-belief from day one, because I just give them something that they can succeed in. Right. So to me, that makes the most sense, is to really always look at the macro, but realize that, like, once we've set the compass, we just focus on the micro. We focus on the micro, because that's what builds the self-belief. And then a month goes, 2 months goes, 3 months goes. I'm not asking them if they drank water, right? I don't need to look at the app. Did they check the box that said they've already? It's just part of who they are as a person. So their identity can change, even if they don't really believe that they can change it. But they change it themselves. It's just easier for us as coaches looking in, because they don't see it. They just see their life. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure you guys could look at a client's life and say, well, yeah, it's right here. Like, this is you know, this is your body life. Like, it's not that, but it's hard for them to see. It's extremely hard for them to see sometimes. And even if they know it, it's even harder to change, right? Change is difficult. I think change is very, very difficult, but I'm just a huge believer in just, you know, just small little changes, right? Small little changes just lead to huge, you know, what's that one term that everybody says? It's big things hinge on small little, or, like the door has a small hinge, like things hinge on small things. And it's really true. It's really true. Because somebody starts drinking water and they're not drinking, soda pop or something, like, what's a year from now look like? Huge. Somebody starts building muscle and doing goblet squats and swings and pull-ups. What does a year look like from now? Amazing. Like, dude, I have deltoids, like, it's like your body, your form of your body will be dictated by the function, right? That's just biology. It's not rocket science. Form follows function. So if somebody functions a certain way, eventually the form is going to show up, and that's the way our bodies are. So we don't need to fight against our biological systems. It works every time. It works every time. But anyway, that's kind of a long-winded answer. I'm not sure if I directly answered it.
No, that's good. We did we actually did an episode on that a while ago about, do you need a goal? Like, do you really need, when if you start with a trainer, some people will be like, right, what's your goal? Like, and what weight do you want to be, or what do you want to lift, or whatever it is. But when you're really truly just starting out and you haven't got a process in place and all of that, and you've let kind of a lot of dominoes fall down, basically a lot of things go by the wayside. It's kind of like the goal, like you just said, is to do the small things first, and then you can start to think about, you can start to then like zoom in on what you want a specific goal to be. But at the very start, it's kind of just general stuff, like you say, like drinking water or eating enough protein or whatever it is. And for most people, because like you said, your biology then changes as well, because you might not have the biology right now to be able to do the thing to get to the goal that you want. You've got to change that first through habits. And we talk about that a lot. James keeps mentioning Atomic Habits, which I haven't read, so I need to read that.
Book. I reference that book to my clients like all the time. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant book, and to me that's like the Bible of like habits, because it's so well written. And if you haven't read it, whoever's listening, I highly recommend you get it. Atomic Habits by James Clear, game changer, absolutely.
Fantastic. We're coming up to about an hour now, Franz. So I think we will start to wrap up. It's been fantastic talking to you, and just here. I mean, it feels like we're just at the top, at the tip of the iceberg, really, with what we could discuss. So I mean, I'm sure we'll do this again at some stage in the future, because it's been fascinating. Pete, do you have any questions or anything you want to ask Franz, or any thoughts?
I did, but a massive helicopter's just flown over and I was on mute, so I haven't heard anything that's gone on for since the last. No, honestly, this Chinook's just gone over and hovered over the garden and then buggered off. But there you go. No, I think that's been really good, because I'm in a similar space. Like, guys, I'm 44. And I've been out of shape, and and I'm the same as you. I eat pizza and drink beer, and like, not all the time, obviously, but like enough for it to have to keep it in check myself. So it's just good to hear how you deal with stuff, and because you've been doing this a very long time, and you're saying you train high level athletes and all that sort of stuff, but it is just all about like we say, that process of just sweating the simple stuff, and then the other stuff becomes easier. I love that, and it'd be great to have you back on as well to delve into it deeper.
Yeah, I would love that, but maybe we do it at night. Oh no, but that wouldn't work because you guys are. Then I could have a scotch, and I could actually show dads that you can be lean and have a scotch. You guys drink.
Mr.
Do people drink scotch in the UK? Do you guys are there like English whiskies?
There's English whiskies. It's mainly gin, though, isn't it? Like London gin.
Yeah.
Oh, gin. I don't like gin.
Yeah, Scotch whiskey, isn't there? Irish whiskey. Yeah. Mr. Paul Bassett, do you have anything you'd like to say? Or do you have a final thought? Paul normally does a little final thought, sort of summing up. He's not fit, but he's got a bit of a cold today.
No.
So get a final thought.
Well, Scotland has its whiskey, doesn't it? But apparently the UK makes more cheese than France.
Really?
Yeah. So there's more different kinds of cheeses than the French. So I know the French want to think they have all the cheeses, but apparently in the UK there's a higher variety of cheeses. But anyway,
I did not know that.
It's a fact for you.
Fact.
A fact, yeah, I like to end on some kind of fact. And we did have with we had Chris Denning on, and he said, if I ruled the world, and if he ruled the world, he would pass a law basically banning plastic kettlebells. I'll leave you with this question: if you ruled the world, what would you do?
If I ruled the world, oh God, we
need to send this question in advance, really.
I know. I've sprung it on him.
I would resign. I would resign immediately, and I would go live in the Bahamas or Costa Rica, and I'd hide. I wouldn't rule the world.
I think I'd do that as well, actually. So
the thing is, if you were ruling the world, though, would you really be able to hide from anyone? Like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, you know what? I would. Yeah, that would be horrifying. I hate politics.
Yeah, if I ruled the world, if you ruled the world, you'd renounce it immediately.
Exactly. I'm going to announce I'm leaving of the office. I'm done. I'm going to have a scotch. I'm going to go to Costa Rica. I'm done.
Yeah, exactly.
And just following on from your cheese comment, Paul, do you know the largest manufacturer, the country that manufactures the most cheese in the world?
America, the US.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a big country. I mean, we got almost 300 million people.
A lot of cheese.
We just got a lot of everything here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, California itself has almost 40 million people. Just one state, 38 million people. That's a lot of people.
I don't know if that includes that liquid cheese that you put on nachos and things like that. It might include that as well.
Is that even cheese? Isn't that just like toxic rubbish, right? I don't even think it's cheese. I don't even think it's
We'll have to get back on that. It must be classed. There must be some legal classification for what cheese is.
What is cheese? Yeah.
This is where people have now got to go up and look up all the cheese jokes. Because there's a lot of them. Just Google cheese jokes, and there's millions of them. Like, how do you eat a Welsh cheese carefully, and all that sort of stuff.
Oh God.
There's lots of them. And the dad jokes as well, so it'll fit in perfectly.
Oh, there we go.
There
we go. But do people still? I mean, I'm assuming that people eat fish and chips, or is that just like was that? Yeah.
No, fish and chips. Yeah, is probably the national. It's probably the national dish, isn't it? I think.
And what's the fish? Is it just like a cod or something, or like what?
Yeah,
cod.
Cod. Yeah, battered cod usually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had a sandwich when I went there. What I really liked there is I was going to some of the I guess they were Indian restaurants, like the Indian food. Maybe somebody told me it wasn't really Indian food. It was like close to India, like some other country, but it was really good. You know, like the curries, like the chicken curry, the chicken tikka masala. Like I really enjoyed the restaurants in London that had that, because it's a little different than what we have here in the States. But
yeah, I think England's probably got more curry houses than, well, India probably. Right. Paul has got to run in a second. Right. I'm going to wrap up then, guys. I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's listened. Please like, please subscribe, please follow, please share. If you're able to leave a review, please leave a review. And I just want to say thanks very, very much to Mr. Franz Snideman, who's come over he hasn't come over from San Diego, but he's live from San Diego. And hopefully he will visit the UK fairly soon, or when he's able to get over, and we'll do some Primal Speed workshops and things over here.
I would love it, man.
Should be great.
I am there.
And we'll go for fish and chips. We'll go for a curry. We'll go for a pint of ale, and that'll be very, very good. Cool. Right. See you later, Mr. Peter Lance.
See you. Ta-ra. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you all.
Paul has already left. So bye-bye, Franz.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. That was great. Really appreciate it.
Lovely. And thank you very much, guys. We'll see you again next week. Take care.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at health-oddity.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.